there are no kings of horror anymore. Modern horror is not the same as the horror of the classic age of Hollywood, the golden age. There was no reliance on gore or shock. There was pathos, there was feeling, there was depth, there was connection. You looked at the classic monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, and you could see that they were as tortured as the victims that they went after in many ways. Michael and Jason changed their masks. Essentially, you've got the same character. A huge, brutal killing machine that it's really hard to feel any pathos for.
That's where the true power lay with the kings of horror.
They could command, they could instill fear, but they didn't need special effects or buckets of gore to accomplish this. They, through their actions, had us use our imagination, the most powerful gift we have, the most powerful ability we have, and we created what we saw on that screen to a greater depth.
Boris Karloff, Frankenstein's monster. This huge, shambling creature, composed of the bodies of the deceased, emerging from the darkness.
He had a human brain that had remnants of its memories, of its personality, of who he was when he was alive, now trapped inside this shambling husk. The monster did not ask to be made into what he was, just as many of us do not ask to be made into what we are. And the terrifying scene where I was throwing flowers into the lake alongside the little girl. Running out of flowers, I looked at her, thinking she could float like the flowers. I scooped her up, threw her in, only to watch her sink before me. I went in there looking for her, but I could not find her.
And then there was Lon Chaney Jr., who portrayed the Wolfman, also known as Lawrence Talbot,
who returns home and at a festival hears a cry for help, goes in armed with his walking stick, and he attacks what he thinks is a wolf who bites him in the course of it. But like some mysterious form of rabies, the disease is now transferred to him through that bite, and he is infected with the curse of the werewolf. And when he's told that it was a man that he killed, his response is, no, it was a wolf, I tell you. It was a wolf.
He carried the painful knowledge that for 3 nights a month, he would not even be human.
He too was as much a victim as the ones he went after.
The transformation scene of man into beast was not as spectacular with overblown special effects, but done simply with the application of self-focus and the makeup, gradually turning Lon Chaney's character of Lawrence Talbot into the Wolfman.
And of course there is Bela.
Bela Lugosi left his native Hungary a criminal. His crime against the Austro-Hungarian Empire, he wanted to unionize the actors. For this, he was punished by not being allowed to perform in any theater in Hungary. That is why he came to America.
His portrayal of Dracula. Yes, I learned those lines phonetically. And he played Dracula without the use of fangs. But those piercing eyes and the gestures of his hand drawing you into his own web, into his world.
When we see the castle of Count Dracula, it is a decayed, crumbling wreck, reflecting the country that he is seeking to leave, dead and desolate.
His world is decaying and crumbling around him. He must find new nourishment. He must find new, fresh blood to sate his hunger. He walks the streets of London, dressed in evening finery, looking around at my new land, my new feeding grounds. These were the monsters I remember watching as a child growing up, and understanding that the major problem was that many of them were misunderstood. Could there have been some way to help them? In the end, their deaths was not so much a release of the fear they had on the population around them, but it was a release from who and what they were. Peter Lorre, almost tragically comical in his portrayal of the villains he did. Yes, the fiend, the murderer, almost a craven, but yet there was a darkness to him. Peter Lorre, who had portrayed the villains he did in a way of expressing their own vulnerability. He was not intimidating. He was not terrifying in the conventional sense. He was almost comical in some ways. Pathetically comical so. The haunted, fearful look on his face that he carried through all his characters, as if he was running away from something inside of himself. They never understood. They never truly understood. That was the power of those films. They engaged your imagination. They engaged your feelings. They reflected our own darker sides. Where are the monsters? We say you need only look in the mirror to find your monster. Time isn't kind with anyone. We live a few scant decades, and then we're memories. And in time, even those memories fade. But as long as those films exist, as long as there's someone who remembers them, they live, and they will always live. I raise my glass to them, to the monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Mummy, all those dark denizens. They were the best friends I ever had.